Mina, I have been spending time on the Amazon Music app this week. I'm not even just saying this for the advert, I really have, because I got in my head the song. Do you remember the movie Con Air? My friend Caroline was talking about the movie Con Air. She watches it every year on her birthday, and I got that song in my head. How Do I Live Without You? And I was like the theme song. This is like a movie from the 90s. I've already alienated a lot of our audience here, probably. There's a movie from the 90s called Con Air, had Nick Cage in it. There was a bunny, there was a box. But I got obsessed with trying to find that song, and I found it. It's by Leanne Rimes. And this is like the good and the bad, right? Like I got lost down a proper rabbit hole of country music and all of that. It's really cool. Like the app gives you like suggestions, and I think one thing that's like a cool feature of the app that I found as well is that when you start searching for your favorite artist or music that you're interested in, it starts showing you podcasts related to them as well, like fan podcasts where they've talked about the artist or episodes that they've been a guest on. So yeah, I think I've been sort of discovering new things even as I go around. So yeah, movie podcasts.
And also, I don't know if you saw on Twitter, but there's just this really amazing little exchange between Jamie Carragher and Liam Gallagher from Oasis. Which he says to him something about, is a little bit rude to him on Twitter, and Jamie says, "Well, you're not exactly the Beatles, and you'll never win the Champions League. So if you want to listen to some Oasis songs, if you want to listen to some Con Air music, Amazon Music is the place to go."
Yeah, get yourself over to getamazonmusic.com/Serie A Chronicles. Sign up for the free 30-day Amazon Music Unlimited trial. It's a great way that you can support the podcast, and it's also great for you because you get to go down these magical music rabbit holes from the 90s and 80s, and depending how old you are, whichever decade you like, actually. Hi, everybody. I was going to start this podcast in a singing voice, and I thought, no, Mina's already done it on her Patreon minisode, and she did it better than I would. So go listen out for Mina. And Pioli's on fire, but Mina, Pioli is on fire. Get your 90s dance tracks out. Get your 2010s, your 2011 Milan strips out. Milan are champions of Italy for the first time in 11 years. Stefano Pioli is champion of Italy for the first time ever in his management career. It finally happened. We were watching and waiting and thinking, could they really stay the course, this Milan team? They are unbeaten in 16 games, and they finished it so comfortably in the end, Mina. Like, I was joking on Twitter, Milan, who lost after winning 3-0 in a final, who I saw even in the days building up to this game, Milan supporters talking about the syndrome d'Istanbul, the Istanbul syndrome, the fear that you can blow things even from a commanding position. They went into the final weekend knowing a draw was enough against Sassuolo. They didn't draw. They smashed Sassuolo out of the water. How great was that as a moment for Milan after all this time, Mina?
I mean, Nikki, when I was watching the game, I was thinking about you the whole time. And I was thinking how much you believed in Rafael Leao throughout, how much you believed in his development throughout the season. And I was a little bit, generally my character is very risk averse, and I don't like watching anything that gives me anxiety or players that are flair players. Because again, it's anxiety, it's unpredictability. I like ones who just do the job, basically, and that's why you're an Arsenal fan, and I'm a vaguely Juventus fan. But it is a lot about how you choose what you love. But him delivering 3 assists, them coming out like as if their life depended on it. They had 1,000 chances almost immediately, and I just thought, my goodness, this is the difference between Milan and every other team this season, is that when it mattered, when the pressure was on, the head-to-heads with the big teams, they held their nerve and they were amazing. They stepped up to the challenge with ice-cold veins and always came through. They went to Anfield and scored against Liverpool. And even when they were being, hassled and thrashed by a team that's so far superior in technique and expertise, they were like, all right, we're going to have fun with this. And I think that the investments made into the youth of this side, the ability to have everyone on board from Gazidis to Scaroni to Maldini to Pioli, it is really a win for a project. It is a win for Stefano Pioli. It is a win for the youth, for the development of Tonali and Leao, who has been amazing in the last, 10 weeks, I'd say, especially. Ended up top scorer, best player in Serie A. Congratulations to you, wonderful player. But I did think of you a lot because I believe that you really loved him throughout. So, I don't know. It was almost like, well done you.
Funny enough, I was thinking of you, Mina. This is what we do. We watch football and we have each other's voice in our heads. I was thinking about Giroud when he scored and thinking mentality monster, which is a phrase you've been using. I know it's a Jurgen Klopp phrase, but you've been using on this podcast. I was thinking, Mina, mentality monster, showing up in the biggest games, showing up in the derby, showing up away to Napoli and scoring the winner, showing up away to Lazio to get the equaliser and then they turn that game around, showing up with the opener against Roma, showing up on the last day of the season with 2 goals. Mentality monster Olivier Giroud. But I think this is the thing with this Milan team. This is why this title push has been so easy to get swept up in for me. And I need to reiterate for people, because the way you introduced me, I really don't want people to come away with the wrong impression that I'm a Milan supporter, because I'm not. I'm an Arsenal supporter.
Oh, no. I'm saying you're an Arsenal supporter.
Yeah.
But you like flair.
I do like flair. But what I also personally have fallen in love with this Milan team is, it almost made my life difficult, because I was trying to write my column this morning and with the word limit I have at The Guardian, I simply couldn't say everything I wanted to say. I just think that this is such a shared triumph, right? Like, this is so about everybody. Because yes, it's about Giroud, who scores 11 goals, first striker in the number 9 shirt since Pippo Inzaghi to get double figures, breaks the curse, does it in the big games. But it's also Rafael Leao, who assists all 3 goals, who has come on in his consistency, especially in this last part of the season, has been consistently monstrous. It's also Mike Maignan, who, okay, this wasn't the most important day for him, but who makes that one save just to remind you in the middle of it, like he's an astonishing
Mike
goalkeeper.
Maignan.
It's also Fikayo Tomori. It's also Pierre Kalulu, who came in from left back. It's also Zlatan, who hasn't played much in the second half of the season, but scored 8 goals in the first half of the season. And more than that, was the guy who came in and transformed the attitude of this club, who said this was his most satisfying Scudetto out of all of them, because this is the one where he feels like he contributed something more. He talked about being the pilot guiding these sort of kids onto the right flight path. And I mean, what a stylish way to celebrate it as well as Latin, of course. I don't even know where that cigar came from, right? He comes out to pick
I feel
up
like
his
it's an Ancelotti ripoff, though.
That's
like,
true.
It was like, what Ancelotti did, you know?
And like, you can't take any part out of it. You can't, because the whole reason you've won the league by 2 points. So you need all of it. You don't just need Giroud's big goals. You need Leao. You need Tonali. You need Benacer, who we haven't even talked about this much over the season, because he's just sort of understated way gone about being probably the best player in that midfield. It's been Calabria at fullback. It's every single one of these players. And then in the heart of it all, it's Stefano Pioli manipulating things just enough to keep them in the right way, starting his team playing one way, adjusting it when he doesn't have Ibrahimovic in the middle of the season, adjusting it again when he loses Simon Kjaer and has to make that decision to bring Kalulu in to play at centre-back. It's so many threads come together. And there's a whole separate thread, which I know you probably want to talk about because you tweeted about it, on like the management side of things. And there's Pioli, for me, at the centre of it, like the orchestrator or the conductor, waving the wands, I guess, as a conductor and making it all happen. It's such a triumph for the collective that for me, it really felt like in the end, as great as Inter were, a better team of players, Milan were the team who deserved to win Scudetto.
Club, overall power, 86 points after 38 days, 18 games without conceding a goal, 18 clean sheets, 16 players that scored different ones, 16 matches in a row without defeat, best defense in the league. You know what's amazing about this is when you're talking about Stefano Pioli, and it's like, I spend all my time trying to figure out like how to build a club. It's almost like this is eventually where I wish I could arrive, you know, where I can have like a couple of billion and I can buy my own club and just do it, you know. But I always think
that's where your Patreon donations are really going, guys. We're just saving up $2 billion to buy a football club.
$2 billion. $2 billion.
We need a few more subscribers to get there.
Just a few, guys. Just a few more, you know. We might need the entire planet to sign on, but you know what I mean. But it was like, I think it's 30% the squad, 30% the coach, 30% the club, and 10% the extra details. Yeah, that's always kind of where I've always settled on, because I'm somebody who believes in the coach is just as important as the squad, you know? And I know that others will obviously have different variations of that, but you know, when you think of the way that this project started, I mean, this is by an owner that defaulted on a loan, that got taken over by a voucher fund, that brought in Marco Giampaolo, because the idea was, and the philosophy remained, that we're young and we want a coach that would help raise the value of this youth so that we can sell them on, or whatever it is, make money and be sustainable. So the idea was right. The execution was wrong, in the sense that, for example, Boban is a winner. And he had ideas of trying to bring in different types of players, perhaps that they weren't all on the same page. So unfortunately, he left. And Marco Giampaolo has a different style of play that just didn't fit what he had. They needed a company man. They needed a pragmatist as well. Stefano Pioli has been one of my favorite coaches since 2000. I would say before that, really, since Chievo Verona. And I think that he is just that. He is the kind of guy who knows how to make the most of what he has. And I'm not going to lie, one of the reasons I followed him is because he was a former Juventus player. So I do tend to keep an eye on those kind of guys, you know, your Igor Tudors, your Stefano Piolis. And I love reading the stuff that he talks about, you know, how Gaetano Chile was there, what makes a club what it is, you know, how people expect you. When he went to Villa Perosa with his parents, when he was a young centre-back that arrived there, and he saw the way the director spoke to him and told him about cutting his hair, and the unit formed around him, and how Shirea made him feel at home. He learned a lot of that, and then he went to Fiorentina and learned so much more. And as a coach, he's just always integrated youth development with technology, with the ability to make friends with management. And I think that his growth is really remarkable to watch, as much as the growth of his young players. But this is a team that lost 5-0 to Atalanta. They were like, all right, we need to change course here. We need to bring in veteran experience. We need to bring in Stefano Pioli had arrived already, lost that 5-0, brought in Zlatan, Simon Kjaer, and built. But it was the pandemic. I mean, he was the guy that finished with the most points during the pandemic. After we were all coming out of lockdown. It was his ability to speak to the guys every day. It was like believing in his squad, and letting the likes of Hakan Lee, of Donnarumma, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, Donnarumma, Kessie this season. It doesn't matter, because this is our philosophy and we're not changing it. So yes, in the short term, we might lose money, but in the long term, you know who we are, and we're not going to be swindled into paying more than we have to. So it is an investment in their philosophy. It is an investment in who Milan is. And that is what is so exceptional about this club in general, is that they've stuck by the principles, and they've done it authentically the Milan way, by building a bridge with their former stars, by seeing Nesta on the pitch, by seeing Maldini helping everyone in the team. You know, how many ex-players come and watch them, how many ex-players come and talk to them. That is what it is. It's a family. And I think that when you see that, it's, you know, they didn't have to go and I don't know, they didn't even steal ideas from anyone. It was just entirely authentically Milan. And I just, for them, that I think is what is so impressive, because they just did it their way. And it was like, we're going to either believe in this project and live it through, or, you know, they never once wavered from that. And they stuck to their principles, and they deserve this victory.
Yeah, there's something that I think I've heard mentioned a few times now, is the concept that there was this great sliding doors moment. And when the club finally said, you know what, we're not going to hire Ralph Rangnick, we're sticking with Pioli. And that definitely is a sliding doors moment. God. But it crosses my mind, or at least, you know, I was thinking about this earlier. Was the real sliding doors moment maybe not even then, but it was actually weirdly something completely beyond their control, which is the arrival of the pandemic? Because Milan was 7th before the pandemic, and they had just lost to Genoa at home. And when they come back, and whether that's because of, as we've talked about before, is it young players in empty stadiums having a different pressure, or whether it's because of something completely different? Maybe it's just because all of those players get 3 months to stop, think about things, come back with a different mindset for different reasons. But they come back from that with 9 wins and 3 draws in the last 12 games. That is such a sort of moment, of course, in everybody's sort of history, right? The pandemic arrived in Europe and everyone's life was upended overnight. But it really feels to me when I sort of go back through it, that moment, out of all of the sort of stuff that was going on for Milan, they found some sort of way of coming together in that rebirth after COVID and well, not after COVID, but after the first lockdown. And it changed everything. And Pioli, whatever happened, found his magic at that point. And since then, it's just been, the trajectory has always been in the right direction. Even last season, finishing second, they hadn't been in the Champions League for 7 years. 7 years. And then they come back and finish second, win the title this season with more points, which was actually what they said was the objective this season. Although I did like Mina. Pioli, who's been quick to chastise everyone for talking to him about the Scudetto season, saying, oh, you never said we were the favourites. You don't talk to me about the Scudetto. As soon as he wins it, he says, actually, privately, with Maldini and Massara, we always believed in the Scudetto. And you're like, all right, we see what you're doing.
There you are.
But Maldini and Ricky Massara, directors, they're also part of this story, right? I think Maldini, we need to at least sort of acknowledge that, first of all, he's really proving himself as a director, because you come in and you just because you're a good former footballer doesn't mean you can be a good director. And I think you've talked about, Mina, those decisions to say, all right, Donnarumma can go, okay, Çalhanoğlu can go. That's really strong leadership the club has shown. And I think the sort of the symbiosis, the working together with Pioli is clearly really strong. You hear that in the way they talk about each other and their relationship. And I think also there is something in the simple fact of, look, both Tomori and Hernandez have said, yeah, I wanted to come and work for the greatest defender. Like, I wanted to come work for the player who was brilliant. I think he is a part of this story too. Again, to me, it all comes back to Pioli. He's the center of the sort of universe that's going on here. But I think that, I guess in that analogy, Maldini is also an important constellation.
Yeah, I think it's important to have, like, your Javier Zanetti's with Inter, and for me, Nedved was a kinder soul, but you know what I mean? Those type of, like, your ex-family there representing, more than anything, even on the pitch, like having the likes of Zlatan Ibrahimovic showing or telling them what Milan means, what it's supposed to mean, how this is so effective. Buying players like Tonali who feel the Milan colours within their soul is also a tremendous step forward. But I guess for me, what I also love about the story is that they asked Pioli at the time about his experience with Inter, and how come Spalletti did a little bit better, or what happened there. And he was saying that I missed out on building the squad in the summer. I came in midway, so it was very difficult for me to try to build when I know how to, which is build with the players, build a bond with the players, sort of do the Ancelotti thing if you like, and then the rest comes into play. And again, it's important to know that he came midway again for Milan. So for me, the pandemic gave him that opportunity to build what he wanted to. It gave him his summer back. It gave him his ability to sort of speak to the players every day, understand who they were as men as well as players. Notice what their insecurities could be, where their points of confidence are, what needed to be worked on, limitations, whatever it was, and try to build those blocks to develop that bond that he needed to. He was talking about speaking to some of those players nearly every single day. What is it that you need to do? How is it that we can talk about things? They took the chef from Inter. Everything has been purely planned. The way that they take care of the gardens. There's so many articles about this as well. But he is somebody who's a great man manager, and we saw that as well at Fiorentina. We've seen that really a lot of places. But he showed the season as well as tactical adjustments. And I really do want to talk about just the likes of putting Krunic in against, fatal Verona, and making him shine, and starting the season with Brahim Diaz, or every single player had something to do. Every single player had their moment that made him shine in this team. And I think that's what's so exciting about all of it, is that, there are the ones that you depend on, the likes of Teo, of course, the likes of Sandro Tonali. You have had Benacer, who you said, look, he has been brilliant, and obviously Fikayo Tomori. But it is that also, like, even Balotelli, I'm going to bring you on, I'm going to let you shine, I'm going to have this moment, I'm going to change, okay, the game is going this way, the game is slipping that way, let me do this. And then you remember stuff like the Spezia game. How many things have gone against them? And yet they've never sulked. They've never gone into a hole. And they've never really talked about them. Like, I don't even remember Stefano Pioli talking all that much about how unfair any of these moments have been for him. He's always been like, okay, it doesn't matter, we'll build. Oh, it doesn't matter, we'll build. You know, even Zlatan is saying, chin up to the referee. You'll have many more days ahead of you. Everything has been approached from a positive positive point of view. Nothing has been negative. They have introduced no negative vibes into the club. Everything is an opportunity. Pepe Marotta has this beautiful saying, and I always go back to it: you never lose. You either win or you learn. And that's what's been spectacular about Milan, is that they haven't lost, in the sense that even when opportunities haven't been achieved, they've looked at them at different ways that they can learn from this and build even better. And that's what I like so much about them, is that they've done it with complete positivity, complete faith in the men that they have put in charge, in the players, in everyone at the top. It's very difficult not to be in love with this story. It isn't. And I can only see good things, because with Redbird coming in, who are all about sustainable growth, whose story with Toulouse is nothing short of miraculous and beautiful themselves, I think the only way is up, right?
It certainly feels that way. And I mean, I think, you know, this is the other thread to this story is some acknowledgement probably is due for Elliott. You think when they came in, they took over a club that was being very chaotically run, and we had this sort of mystery figure of Lee Yong-hong who'd been in charge, and it had been this sort of bundle from Berlusconi onto him, and then in come Elliott. And I mean, the contrast between Elliott and Silvio Berlusconi, of course, you know, the man who would unveil his team coming out of a helicopter, who was always a showman, and Elliott, you know, Gordon Singer, I think this was his first game attending in person in all this time. He came to watch this game in person. But they've done what needed to be done. They've overseen a club that I think has halved its losses on the last year's accounts. They're on course to halve them again, which, when you think we've been in a pandemic, it's not straightforward to do. That's very impressive. Something like I think it is the fourth biggest wage bill in Serie A. So we're not talking about peanuts, but not that much more than half of what Juventus are paying.
80 million. And Inter's 150, Juve's 170.
There you go. So it has been astonishing management, and if they manage to get the figures that are talked about from Redbird, then it will be a healthy profit. But it shows how much they have done to make the club, to revalue the club, to restore it. And I think, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're even necessarily going to be favourites to win the Serie A next season, because we don't know yet, right? They're going to lose Frank Kessié, and we know that Juventus is spending, as Paul Pogba's on his way back, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But we can say that they are on the right footing to keep progressing. And, you know, when I spoke to Stefano Pioli earlier this season, he did say to me, and now we know he's a bit of a liar, but he said to me, the objective to this season is just to get more points than last season, not to win the league. And they did get more points than last season. And if you keep going in that direction, things are going to be good. Is there anything else on Milan? We probably should move on, even though we could probably do the whole podcast just on Milan.
I was going to say that, you know, what would you do for next season? Would you keep Zlatan?
That's a tough one. He talked after this game and said, basically, look, yeah, you know, I don't know where things are with my body at the moment. He's obviously had this sort of ongoing knee situation that's been difficult. He was asked if he'd consider more surgery, and he said maybe. His contribution on the pitch in the second half of the season was not a lot. He did score in this game and had it disallowed, and it was rightly disallowed in the second half. I think if he does stay, it's going to be on a significantly reduced wage. So I think it's not unthinkable, but you need to see where his body's at first, for sure. Just wanted to say a quick shout out to all of our new Chronicles Tifosi Patreons. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Simone Dozio, Ravishankar Rajagopal, Nasser Abujbara,
Milen Emilov, and Eric Graffer. Thank you so much. And please, if you too feel so inclined as to become a Chronicles Tifosi Patreon, join at seriachronicles.com/Patreon, or click the Chronicles Tifosi button on our website. To support the podcast and help us keep producing it, you can also leave us a one-time tip via Ko-fi. Just click the button on the website, and welcome to the new patrons.
Now, Mina, we've talked a lot about the champions, and I think that was the right thing to do because they're the champions. But we should also talk about Inter. They won by the same scoreline, funnily enough, this weekend. Also 3-0 in one of those wonderful sort of very Serie A coincidences. They were playing against Marco Giampaolo, the manager who Stefano Pioli replaced at Milan. This game was obviously on at the same time. I was multi-screening to watch both of them, but of course my attention was more on the Milan game. I felt like Milan certainly put on more of a show. They certainly started the game much quicker. Inter took a bit longer. But in the end, I'm not sure how much we really need to say about this game. Inter won comfortably against a team who didn't have a lot to play for, which I suppose is only the same as Sassuolo at Milan. But the feeling for Inter at the end of this is not going to have anything to do with this game. It's going to be the missed opportunities along the way. It's going to be, I suppose, above all else, the game against Bologna with Radu's mistake. But also, there's not the only chance they've missed in this season. It's not. They were 1-0 up in the derby. They had their chances all the way through, really.
No, I know, and I feel sad that it's all going to fall on Radu's head, And I think that's what upsets me. I mean, there was the draw against Genoa, their opportunity, and you're right, of course, the derby, that's like probably the most important one, because you think you have it in your hand, They were fantastic, but I don't know what happened in February, in all honesty, and something just totally fell off, and they couldn't get themselves back on. And obviously losing Brozovic was difficult for certain matches as well. Again, this is something that you didn't necessarily see with Milan, who were able to perhaps rotate or rely on different players at times, when I think him to have more of a set team, which is technically still superior. It was funny, I was reading Gazzetta today, but just sort of because it's like a parade, a celebration of everything that's happened. And there was this article, obviously, we're talking about Inter, and one thing they wrote was they threw it in the trash for a team but it's like it was written with so much like disgust, right? Like they just threw it away when they were so superior to everyone around. And I thought they were superior, but I mean, this has been a hard league because Napoli was in from the first day as well, and we sort of dismissed Napoli, but we didn't really dismiss them until March. I mean, pretty much like in the first 11 games of the season, they had 31 points, and so did Milan. I mean, Inter had 24. Like, they have slowly climbed themselves and put themselves in great positions where they were in control of their destiny. And they were fantastic after beating Napoli, and really, truly a team in which I think had elevated themselves from a tactical point of view. They were so much more unpredictable this season. They had different avenues to goal. And of course, you can't dismiss the fact that they lost some important players. There was obviously a change of coach. That's always going to bring, when you have stability in Stefano Pioli in a project that's continuing and one that has to change a little bit, it is going to be difficult. And I think they've still had a remarkable season in the sense that they've lifted 2 trophies and they pushed Milan to the very end. They have the better team. I understand that, but I still think that this is a very well-run side, and it is what it is, but perhaps a better project one. But what worries me is that they've obviously had to downsize this season, and next season they have to downsize even further and at least lower the wages by 15%. That's the very bare minimum, which probably they can achieve with the loss of Vidal and Alexis Sanchez, but you wonder whether or not, I mean, there's going to be a big sacrifice there, right? And what's the trajectory of this Inter side going forward? And can we rely on them to compete with the flourishing project that's Milan?
Yeah, we sort of talked about last week, didn't we, about like a grade for Inzaghi, like even if he doesn't win, we're still sort of, I was putting him as sort of B+, and you, I think, might have gone even higher. We think overall you still can give him lots of credit for what he's done this season. In the end, the teams who contested this title to the end were not the two that I had marked down in my card at the start of the season. I had Juventus and I had Napoli as my dark horse, and it's been such a
really. You didn't have Inter?
Oh yeah, no, I had Napoli down as my dark horse, for sure. Okay. I think Napoli should have won the league this season. That's a whole different conversation. But I think they're the team who I think should have the most regret about an opportunity that they had. And maybe that story is completely different if Osimhen never gets injured in the beginning of the season. But who knows? But I think Inter, still have regret, and I think it's because of the way things played out, right? They had a chance to go 7 points clear if they beat Milan, and they didn't. They should have beaten Milan. They were better than Milan that day. And in fact, every time they've played them, I felt like they're the better team. You look what happened in the cup, where they won 3-0. I know that was a slightly misleading scoreline as well, but when you put them on the pitch together, I think Inter have more resource, but they haven't had the stubbornness, the consistency, the belief, and that's something again that Pioli talked about, and that's difficult to sort of come to terms with. But then, I can give all these sorts of words like stubbornness and belief, and I think to myself, yeah, okay, but if Lautaro doesn't miss a penalty against Milan, if you just don't have that moment with Radu, this is how fine the margins are. It was a fine margin season. There was not a lot in this season, and Inter did lose it on the fine margins in the end. And there's lots to like about some of the football they played, especially in the first half of the season. I thought was, and we talked about it, was better than anything we saw under Conte. They played some scintillating football when they were good. There's things that are really encouraging here, and the problem is that some of the things that are really encouraging are the ones that feel like double-edged swords, because again, in this last part of the season, Lautaro has been really good. But Lautaro went missing for a part of the season, and when he did go missing, that was one of the periods when they struggled. And I haven't got the explanation for it, other than that some players blow hot and cold. And then if your players blow hot and cold, well, what's the answer to that? Is there a way of getting more from them in different ways, or is it simply a question of your squad not being able to cover for that player? And the thing that is troubling then is, I mean, look, Mina, when you say we can save a lot of this wage bill by saying goodbye to Sanchez and Vidal, it sounds good, but Sanchez scored some important goals this season. Like, he's not at the top of his game anymore, but he actually had times this season when he played pretty well. So
of course, I agree.
Yeah, if you're losing that player, what's your replacement? What's your plan? And yeah, that's just the thing, like you alluded to, like it feels hard to see how they go forward from here without really smart recruitment. Sort of good recruitment Milan made, going out and getting Kjaer and Ibrahimovic, I guess, who didn't cost a lot of money.
Well, I mean, what they do have is Simone Inzaghi, who is very good with bringing the best out of players. He is very good as from a mental point of view. I think his work at Lazio was exceptional in sort of building up the players, and he's very good at utilizing. Sometimes it's quite difficult to build when you have a lot of really good players or a team that looks like it's attack dependent, but he's very good at finding the balance. And so I think that he is a plus in that sense. I'm never going to really believe in his tactical adjustments. I don't think he's there yet. I don't think he's yet on the level of Stefano Pioli when it comes to tactical adjustments, substitutions. But that comes with time. And he's been a lot better this season than he was, for example, last season with Lazio. And he was better at the second half of the season than he was in the first. But I think scouting is important for them now. And I think that it's important to go for sort of clever buys, because having Alexis Sanchez on all that money to come in and sometimes do a job for you, yeah, I agree. It's great that he's there, but I'd rather somebody that I can build with who will, like even Lautaro, even if he's going to have his bad moments, at least I know that he's young enough and that's going to happen. It's an inconsistent moment. We've seen that a lot. But again, to bring Dybala at 29, who's just as inconsistent, to me, it's a bad deal, but by all means. Whereas Perisic is the one that I would have signed to a deal a long time ago, So I think sometimes, like, having him, I mean, still, even yesterday, just coming on the pitch with his crutches, he is such a vocal leader in that dressing room. He is important as a figurehead. He is a person who's won the treble with Bayern, who won the title with Inter. Like, he's an important asset to the team. And I think that I would have secured that a while ago, because I know what I get with him is consistency. And age is nothing but a number, because Modric is 37 years old. And frankly speaking, if you have a Croatian on board, never let him go. Okay? I mean, this is the one thing I've learned, is that there is something in the water when it comes to Croatia and when it comes to people of Algerian descent. Your Benzemas, your Riyad Mahrez, your Benasses, your Zinedine Zidane's, I don't know, but it's also the same for Croatia. I mean, Mandzukic, Modric, Rakitic, they don't age either. They can play at 40, marvelous football, So keep Brozovic, pay him whatever he needs. Keep Perisic, pay him whatever he needs. And I think that, don't go for Dybala. I mean, bring him if you like, but again, I don't see. It's not that he's not talented. Is he consistent? And I think cynicism has been their problem, because they are a team that has produced the most opportunities in front of goal, and they did score a lot of them. But I think that's where they need to add, because Dzeko's old. Lautaro is young, so he will probably maintain a little bit of that inconsistency. And I think there needs to be a better bench players than, frankly, for me, Correa and Alexis Sanchez, and Caicedo, who was probably going to leave anyway, to be honest with you. I mean, they're all probably going to leave: Sanchez, Vidal, Caicedo, Raju, Kolarov, Ranocchia, and Vecino. Sorry. So I don't know, but I do think that, to build, sometimes you might have to go for sort of either younger players or veterans that can come in and do a job for a while and help the youngsters grow on board. So I agree with you. It is about, your finding your Tomoris, but also finding like your Simon Kayers, I mean, when Juventus were building, it was the Barzalis as well as the Pogbas, it's kind of like finding both of it and balancing it all together. And they have Beppe Marotta. So they should be fine in that sense. But I look at this team and I think that it's still growing. Inzaghi's learning from a tactical point of view. And I still think that as a tactician, he's still one of the very best in Italy. As purely on a tactical level, what he's done, I think, is fantastic, really. And I think the squad is fantastic in midfield and defense. It's just about, I guess, bringing the best out of your attack. Even though I'm saying this, but they've scored so many goals. So, but there is just something there where I think they're an emotional team as well. And the problem is that what Antonio Conte did was try to take the Pazza out of the team. He made them a little bit more zombie-like. And now there's a little bit more of that Pazza creeping back in. So they need to nip that in the bud before it gets any more serious.
I don't know if it's just because we've just been talking about our musical sponsor, Mina, but when I heard you say, if you get a hold of a Croatian, never let him go, I thought that is the title of Mina's ballad that I'm looking forward to hearing over the summer. Right, enough. As our producer has just written in the shared document, enough of the first losers. Let's talk about the bottom half of the table, because there was big drama at the other end of the table this weekend as well. We went into the final round knowing that Venezia and Genoa were both down, but it was all to play for Salernitana and Cagliari. Salernitana were the team in the favourable position. They were in 17th spot going into the final round, but they got absolutely walloped, Mina, by Udinese. They didn't just lose, they got thumped 4-0 by a team that is very much with nothing left to play for it this final round of the season. Udinese, they're headed for themselves for a bottom half finish. So it's all over to Cagliari. If they can beat Venezia, last place Venezia, relegated Venezia, then they will stay up. And they don't do it. What a sort of chaotic and perhaps fitting, because we're talking about the bottom end of the table, not the top half of the table, but a chaotic end to the Serie A season at that end.
Yeah, it seems quite hard to celebrate a team's salvation when they were so heavily walloped by Udinese. And you felt like it could have been more had it not been for the save of the penalty, And it's just, it was a crazy game. And here's the thing, I was convinced that they were going to win against Udinese. Udinese had only racked up 4 away wins at this point. They were a team that don't travel very well. And you think they have nothing to really play for. And the fans at Salernitana, like the way that they fill the Stadio Orecchi, and just you saw that whole emotional journey that they've been on, the way that Davide Nicola stands there with his shoes, and threatening them from afar, that this would be a win for them. I was convinced. I wasn't even slightly doubting it. So when Udinese scored their first goal, I'm like, okay, they're going to fix this. It's fine. No, they didn't fix this. And obviously it's much harder to do when I think your best player, Edison, is missing in midfield as well. And goalkeeper Luigi Giuseppe is out injured. So Bellic takes the gloves and you just think to yourself, like, okay, you sort of saved the penalty, but you're also the guy that gave it away, right? So it was all a little bit mad. But this was a team, and I just want to go back to the press conference, in his pre-match press conference. And then Nicola says, it started with that famous 7% chance of safety that our director of sport talked about when I arrived. it was 7% chance of survival. And he said that he explained that to the team. He said they needed to create an identity. They started to focus on the details because he goes, because 7% does not give you much wiggle room, And I'm like, no, it really doesn't, But I love the investments that he made in the squad. It's like, it doesn't matter if you make mistakes. Take the risk that you need to take if you think it's going to come off. Like, it doesn't matter. Just take it, And I love that he's given them that confidence. I love the way he's built on an identity. And I love, obviously, the work of Sabatini. In general, they've made some really good decisions after nearly falling into oblivion and finding an owner in the last second. But there's a part of me that just thinks, I cannot believe that Cagliari couldn't score the goal. I just couldn't believe it.
It was sort of extraordinary because they and again, perhaps this is because we're talking about teams that are at the end of the table, right? We're not talking about Inter and Milan. We're talking about teams that have limited resources. We're talking about a Cagliari team that has lots and lots of flaws as a football team. But you did sort of think, with the one thing they have got, perhaps João Pedro, that is the guy who Italy brought on when they needed to save a World Cup qualifying playoff, by the way, which was a great decision. God, it still hurts. But, he is a pretty sort of competent Serie A forward. You'd think against a team that's last in the table that they'll find a way. You just kept expecting them to find a way. In fact, I think there were a lot of people who were feeling quite fatalistic about it, that Salernitana, after this extraordinary run, and it has been extraordinary to get themselves even in a position to not get relegated, that this was the inevitable ending to it. Is a sort of happy for Cagliari, but quite sad for Salernitana, like 95th minute goal that ends it all. But it just didn't happen. And it wasn't, it's a tricky one because Mainpar, the Venezia goalkeeper, played well. He made a good number of saves. But they weren't these sort of brilliant chances, most of them. There was a lot of sort of headers that required a save, but if he hadn't saved them, you'd think, well, how on earth has he not made that save? So I don't know. I just think this story, a bit like the one at the top of the table, has worked out the way it was supposed to in the end. You've mentioned it, Mina, and Salernitana have at least got a little sprinkling of brilliance in their side with Edison, who's really been such a big sort of factor for them in this battle back from relegation, and they didn't have him this weekend. But I think that's been one of the big tells in this relegation battle. But the biggest one in the end is Davide Nicola, who somehow finds these solutions from nowhere, and famously did his bike ride, his personal Giro d'Italia, the last time he did it. He's now said he's going to walk from Salerno to the Vatican, which is, I've just checked on Google Maps. If you thought I looked distracted there for a second, it's because I was just doing the Google Maps on it. Google Maps reckons it's about a 57-hour walk. So good luck. Wait,
is it barefoot or just a walk?
I've heard it said that it's barefoot, but I haven't seen him say that.
I read that it's only a walk as well.
Yeah.
Okay, because I, like you, think it's just a walk.
Yeah. Still a good walk though, Mina. I mean, I'm not walking 57 hours to go to the Vatican, I'll tell you that much. I'll take a car.
You guys, I will print my average steps, and it's about 1,000. Sometimes, like a good old weekend, sometimes like 67.
I'm sure I remember hearing you talk on another podcast, Mina, about a day when I think you'd taken 17 steps, which I thought was impressive.
You see what I mean?
I was envious, to be honest.
I have a lot of those days.
I was envious.
I'm not moving. So had it not been for the bathroom, I don't think I'd get up entirely. But yes.
Yeah, congratulations to Salernitana. I think that's I think that's probably the Romantics' choice. I think the Romantics wanted to see them stay up and to have another Nicola escape story. I'm super fascinated to see if he will finally get at some point his chance to do something other than fight against relegation. But
yes,
he's certainly pretty good at getting out of tight spots. There was not
just
all that happened. Oh no, sorry, go for it. If you want to say that.
I just wanted to say that it was Giannini who wasn't having an argument with Sky Italia and basically talking about the fact that, you keep talking about takeovers when, we're in the middle of like a very delicate time of the season. And it's like, yeah, but you also have to take responsibility. You know, Giuliani at this point did actually raise the wage level. He was trying to bring in new players. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, but I was convinced that Cagliari was going to make top six. You know, they were playing good football, but it all sort of fell apart. And when you see some of the names that were on the pitch yesterday, you know, like João Pedro, Pavoletti, you know, Nandes was back in there, you know, Bellanova. Like, I know that Nandes missed so much of the season, but when you think of all of that, Lico Giannis, who had an amazing, you know, last week, you think, how is it possible that you guys didn't win? And I like, for Cagliari, it has been the change of coaches, but they really have, I mean, when you sort of track their season, they have tried really hard to solve all of their problems and find solutions and try to dig deep. And they had a good start to this year. But it's amazing how it all fell apart. And I wonder what's going on there or what it is, but it is a story that sort of intrigues me as much as Napoli, because I feel like they shouldn't be where they are, and yet they always find themselves struggling.
Yeah, definitely, actually. And one other thing, name I just want to put out from this sort of whole setting, I was really impressed with Mattia Caldara for playing for Venezia at centre back, and just one of those names that I remember thinking he was going to be one of the real sort of future of the Italy team players. And it hasn't really happened for him. He's 28 years old now, so it's not likely to happen for him. He's had another injury hit season, but had a couple of really strong games during the season. He played well against Roma as well, so nice to see Caldara, and nice to see, frankly, you know, to name it, I think there's been so many seasons in Italy where this sort of idea that teams with nothing to play for just roll over, and that's expected, and that's how things end, and so all the results become very predictable. We had two teams here who could have rolled over that didn't. Venezia didn't, and stopped Cagliari from winning and staying up, and Udinese clearly didn't. They smacked 4 goals past Salernitana. So it's nice that some of those old stereotypes did not come to the fore on the final weekend. No biscotti for anyone here. Fiorentina against Juventus, Mina, I think we should talk about this as well, because Fiorentina getting into Europe after having spent so much of this season looking like they were lagging behind that pack, and of course that comes at the expense of Atalanta, who we'll talk about as well in a second. But let's talk about this Fiorentina-Juventus game first, because of course it's La Viola against their rivals, the team they love to hate on, even though Juventus very often don't even feel strongly enough about Fiorentina probably to reciprocate that rivalry as passionately as it goes the other way. But I think in a season that Juventus signed away Dusan Vlahovic, their top scorer, and you thought that would be the thing that would derail their European bid, for them to get the European place by beating Juventus on the final weekend, that must have been some sweet, sweet satisfaction for a lot of fans in Florence.
Yes, absolutely. And obviously Vlahovic was there, and he did congratulate them and went and spoke to everyone and said congratulations on managing to win a place in the Conference League. They have not qualified for UEFA competitions since 2016, 2017. So it is a remarkable achievement. But the fact that they have managed 22 more points than they did last season is crazy. Okay, it is crazy for me, the work of Vincenzo Italiano. And yes, Vlahovic was there for a lot of it, but for really half a season. Like, it's incredible how well they've done, especially at home, especially in front of their own fans. They haven't traveled as well, but they have been fantastic in their patterns of play, in their confidence, in their consistency. They have been a team to fear. They've managed to pull out some amazing results. And I feel like they've been Napoli's bogey team as well, you know? And I guess I want to say, like, congratulations, because it's a team that's worked really hard to get here. But I am disappointed somewhat, you know, going for the future, sort of seeing where they are. You didn't get to keep Dusan Vlahovic. You tried to offer the world and as much as you could on a financial level. But I am disappointed in the way that they've treated Lucas Torreira, and saying to him, you have to lower your wages and you have to keep, you know, you're basically making the guy accept like £10 as his meal, you know? And I want to know that they are going to show some support in trying to build this team further, because they talk a lot about it, but sometimes they make these decisions because if you lose that player who's been so important for you, who's given his life for you, I don't think it's a very good business move.
No, I think that's definitely fair. Yeah, it's going to be a real treat to see Fiorentina back in Europe. I think a city and a club that has had its rough, lean years in recent times, but was one of the Sette Sorelle, that was one of the big clubs in Italy, and it's a treat, I think, to see them back up in this place competing for it. And I think it's really such impressive work. I wish I had in front of me, and I don't, the exact number of points they've gained on last season under Vincenzo Italiano, but
22,
the work he's done.
22.
Did you just say that and I missed it? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
See, guys, she doesn't listen to me.
I don't. No, sometimes I'm just trying to check things while Mina's talking, and I was trying to check something there and I missed it. I'm sorry, Mina.
Oh no, don't worry.
It's an astonishing result and an astonishing manager, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the club does now in the summer, and I'm excited to see what they do going into Europe next season. I'm also, Mina, despite everything, despite this not being a particularly impressive Juventus season by Juventus standards, I'm pretty excited about their transfer window, which we should talk about just quickly, because already the sort of Diavola out thing is pretty clear. Chiellini, obviously, this was his last game, and moving on to LA. Paul Pogba,
he did it in style with blood streaming down his face, because this is what Juve means.
The only way he knows how. Paul Pogba back in Serie A is, to me, that's fun. He's one of those players who I'd love to have in Serie A. I think he's a really brilliant footballer to watch, and his time at Manchester United never quite lived up to what they hoped for him. It would certainly be one of the sort of business coups of recent football years if Juventus could sign this guy for basically for free, not technically, but close to for free from Manchester United, sell him there for 160 odd million, and then get him back again for free if they can then get a tune out of him again when he comes back. What do you think of it, Mina?
Look, I think from a business point of view, it obviously makes such tremendous sense, right? I mean, he's willing to accept a wage cut to come back to Juventus, or at least that is what we're being told, because the salary was higher at Manchester United, and he has. Well, this is another thing, what he's being offered by other clubs or what he's being tempted by. I think that one of the things that has really struck him is that he likes to learn. He likes to have somebody who sits there and tells him, no, do it this way, or go this way, or lean this way. And he doesn't necessarily feel that kind of support from a management level, a coaching level, because there's been so much instability at United. He was never really able to build a bond with a specific coach and be able to say, like, I need help with this. And players around him didn't help them at it either. But this also worries me as somebody who thinks that he still is someone who can't do it on his own. He needs a midfield that it does offer the kind of support. I mean, when he did show his best work, it was done so when he had like a defensive support around him, and as well as great players ahead of him. So he has the great players ahead of him. You have Vlahovic on top, you really don't need much more, right? But I'm scared that if the midfield balance is not perfect, then we're going to see much of the problems and much of the instability that we saw again. At the end of the day, your midfield is king. And if your midfield sucks, you don't win anything. I don't care how stacked your forward line is and how stacked your back line is, your midfield is king. And you have to get the right balance there. So when you think about the players that they're going for, he needs a Kante next to him if he wants to play that kind of role, or he needs players that will have enough energy to cover defensive gaps, or at least two fullbacks that are very, very strong, both going forward and coming back. And so if you don't have the great fullbacks and the midfield that isn't well balanced, I'm scared that we're going to see in Manchester United's Paul Pogba. So, yes, it's exciting. Obviously, his name, commercial point of view, this guy brings in the dollars, But I need to see the rest of the work, because there's always a part of me that's scared that Juventus love the name, and I'm not sure that they love what's important as well, which is bringing that unit. But what Allegri has said is that he wants to bring back experience, and I do think that's important because I do want to see Moretti play, but I also want him to be taught by somebody who actually knows how to play, you know? I mean, Pogba sitting there talking to the likes of, you know, Claudio Marchisio, talking to, obviously, Andrea Pirlo, and that's what helps him get better. And for Moretti, who does he have? Locatelli, who's like a couple of years older, you know? So I do want to bring back some experience, as long as we still focus on a nice blend of experience and youth.
Mina's campaign to bring back Arturo Vidal starts here.
No, I'd rather die.
I think it's really interesting to see how the balance of that midfield works next season. I was listening to you and thinking, I wonder who you would try and force into that role if you just had what you had. And I was thinking to myself, could you, with Locatelli and Pogba as mezzale, could you ask Weston McKennie to be something different, to be more defensive? Because he's got the energy levels, but it is asking him to be a different kind of footballer to what we've seen so far.
But you could ask Dennis Zakaria, perhaps. But again, we have so many good box-to-box midfielders that I'm sort of worried we don't have any specialists in a defensive or director role, you know? And you don't necessarily need a director, but you do need someone a bit more defensive in this team, you know?
And I expect the person it falls to actually is Locatelli, and I'm not sure that that's really the best way of getting the best out of him.
No.
That is enough of that. Atalanta are the team who miss out. It's been definitely a really disappointing end to the season for them. It's going to be strange seeing European football without Atalanta. They end up finishing 8th with 2 losses at the end of the season. Really feels like a long way for them to have slipped. But at the same time, no one would have expected them to have this run of always qualifying for Europe, of being the Italian team that was getting into the knockout stage of the Champions League that they've been under Gianpiero Gasperini. The big question there is, what does his future look like? And some mixed messaging coming out, but the club's certainly trying to say in the last day or so they expect him to be back. There has been talk of a really big offer from Genoa, which would be quite a move, I think, to step down and go to a team going to Serie A. Who knows? But certainly would be a completely different new era. What else is there to say? I mean, is there anything else you wanted to say? I was going to mention Mario Balotelli's goal, not in Serie A this week, but everyone loves to see Mario doing nonsense things and trying to steal the headlines on the day of the season ending in the Premier League. Yes.
That is always what I'll remember. On Atalanta, I think that, you know, like, I just want to sort of applaud them for what has been some tremendous seasons under Gasperini. I do love that the Curva seemed to recognize the importance of him and applauded him the whole way through, and posted a wonderful banner that said, you know, a greeting to those who in some days we could not hug, Bergamo does not forget you. So I thought that was very special. The stadium has been a point of contention because, weirdly enough, like, Atalanta had only managed 4 wins at home. I mean, it's been sort of like a really horrible place for them to try to win anything. They have been a team that have travelled much, you know, well, but unfortunately at home. I mean, this is a side that had 40 shots, 11 on target, and not a single goal against Empoli, who, by the way, had only managed 1 win in 2022, and that was against Napoli. They really like their big games, you know. But Vicario, he has to get some plaudits because he was Superman. Yeah, he was truly a Superman. And I just think that it's weird with Atalanta because, I mean, Duvan Zapata alone had gotten 12 shots, you know. Elliott was finally back, and it was so nice to see him. But him not being around, Papu Gomez not being around, and there's been a loss in technical ability and in intelligence, you know. And they have been reliant, obviously, on Duvan Zapata, who's been absent with injuries. So I think that they need to sort of build that, because it's nice to bring in all these younger players and put them in ones without experience. But you also, like I said, need to have a healthy mix. And I don't think they had that, which is why they're a team that managed only 2 points against, like, Genoa, Salernitana, and Cagliari collectively. But also a team that can have 75,000 shots, were brilliant in some of the games against Champions League. Still a team that attacks so brilliantly, but the balance overall this season has been pretty poor. When they've been good at the back, they've been terrible up front, and vice versa. But I really hope that they keep Gasperini, because I think it is crazy. Their wage bill is less than 50 million. So, yes, I know 80 million has gotten you the title, but I mean, this guy has been living on a tiny wage bill for so many years and brought Champions League 3 years in a row. They finished in third place. So come on, some recognition for the man.
Definitely. And some recognition, Mina, for our amazing listeners. It's your turn to sign off, so I'll get out of your way and let you do that. But I just want to say quickly from me, like how incredibly grateful I am to everyone who's downloaded this podcast all season. Because it's been a ride, hasn't it, doing this first season together of our own thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say that we are all with you, Roma. We desperately hope that you bring home the European Conference League trophy back home. And this will be
especially producer Simon.
Yes, who is a massive Roma fan. Congratulations also to Lazio for finishing in 5th place. I'm sure Sally will find other things to complain about. But yes, Nicky, it's been a tremendous season to watch. And I'm so glad that we've had each other to chat about
Me
it.
too.
And to you, listener, for coming in and downloading us. And, well, not us specifically, but our podcast. Imagine you could download us and have like a hologram.
Oh my God.
I mean, some of them I'm sure will use it just to punch you a bit, like not you, but like anyone, like me, possibly.
I just want to know if I can download me and Gersh do the dishes. Save me some effort.
Yeah, and some of the cooking. But thank you so much, guys, for your support. We will also be uploading mini episodes this week, as we hoped. Roma does it for Italy, and Jose Mourinho gets back to trophy-winning ways. Just a reminder for Amazon Music, get to getamazonmusic.com/Serie A Chronicles. Sign up for free 30-day Amazon Music Unlimited trial and download some of the soundtracks of the greatest 90s movie ever around. Join our Patreon Chronicles Tifosi membership to get loads of bonus episodes and support the podcast and help us to keep producing it. You can also leave us a one-time tip via Ko-fi. Links to both of those on our website, SerieAchronicles.com. You can always find us on Twitter at Nicky Bandini, at Mina Rizuki, and follow Serie A Chronicles on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook if you're over 50. And
Mina.
I said that to my mom the other day. She's like, you never answer me on Facebook. And I'm like, that's because I'm not 1,000 years old. And she said, your sister does. And I was like, all right, fine. Yeah, I'm joking. It was just a little pot shot at Zuckerberg. But yes, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you so much for your continued listening and your fidelity to the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the season as much as we have, and we shall be back. Ciao for now.